All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. I know it's been some time since I've actually had a guest. There was a period there where I had five new guests a week, and I went back to solo episodes, doing live streams again. You get all-encompassing stuff when you talk about what I do with the Move Swiftly podcast. Why it's the number one show on innovative teamwork, why it's been like that for years is because we are all things growth, development, especially in particular employee development. So, what happened recently is the AI thing has been taking over my life. I finally buckled and I started using some chat GPT just to put little things together. And I learned, hey, I gotta practice what I preach per se. And I reached out, I put it in chat GPT. I said, hey man, find me a couple podcasts that are about employee development. Let me see if I can connect with the host or do some. And I just started reaching out to folks. And fortunately, I got in touch with several people. One of them who is a guest today. Her name is Halelly Azulay. Rhymes with Kelly and Hawaii. Again, you already know how we get down. You got to make sure you do that the right way. But on a serious note, when you are striving to be an authentic person online, it is very important that you do your research. I mean, when it came to her, I saw that she was, went to the University of Maryland where my sister graduated. I grew up in Maryland. Saw that she was also into Olympic weightlifting, so she understands the correlation between staying fit and employee development, and obviously her company Talent Grow was something I personally am interested in just getting to know more of. So, before I make the intro too long, Haleli, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Aswan, and I'm glad you found me. And thank you for inviting me to be on your show. I look forward to the conversation.
I do too, because I'm always interested in how a person got started in this business. All right. When you're talking about a world that pushes folks to have the employee mindset, right? In school, especially growing up where we grew up in Montgomery County, it's politics everywhere. It's DC, it's Maryland. Everyone's kind of in that there's entrepreneurs, but then there's that phase or that easily, I'm just going to be an employee, be work for the government, get a decent job, and just be good. So how does one get to the mindset of, hey, I'm gonna now be employed, I'm gonna help develop employees. I'm gonna help, actually go to companies and say, hey, this is what you do to grow. One of the videos I saw you post today was something I agree with, where I actually have it right here, where it's write down everything. Write down everything. If you got something you want to write it down and get better. How did all of that actually start for you?
So
And
yeah,
we
I
don't have
start.
time limits, by the way, so
Okay, like how long do we have?
Right.
I started my business over 19 years ago, which is just insane. And but I started my career in employee development as an internal employee. So I understand
Got it.
both sides.
Right.
And that was over 30 years ago. When I first started, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I went to college, I was like, oh, pick something.
Right.
But I realized that one of my strengths that I've had all my life was I love learning, and I don't like just learning, but I always have this need to like turn around and share it with someone. When I learn something, I want to go teach someone else.
Right.
And that comes naturally and easily to me. So when I went to University of Maryland, I started in the business school track, and
Yeah.
then I got into business school, which is hard to get into Maryland. And
Hmm.
then 2 weeks later changed my major to communication because I did not like the business school. And
Right.
I went into communication and I realized that I love teaching.
Hmm.
And I thought maybe I could go into academia. I wasn't sure. I got a job for a year in marketing, advertising.
Hmm.
No, went back to grad school and I had an assistantship. So I was teaching at the University of Maryland,
Hmm.
teaching speech communication to entry level students, to first and second year students.
Right.
And I realized then what it takes to be a professor and what the inside workings and the politics of getting to be a professor and getting tenure. And I was like, oh, that is not for me. And I didn't like having people that didn't really want to be there. Like they had to take my class, but they didn't really want to learn.
I
And
see.
I don't have the patience to work with people who don't really want to learn what I have to teach. Like, hello, you should do what you are interested in
Right.
and not be a
Especially at that
victim.
level, especially at the collegiate
Yeah.
level. It's like you're
Yeah.
paying money. It's wasting people's money when you're doing stuff that
Yeah.
you don't want
So I was
to do.
like, this is when I learned that there is training and development in the corporate world. I didn't realize that. And I was like, I can work with adults. And of course, I still had my share. I went into that track right away. I mean, as pretty much as soon as I finished my graduate work, I
Mhm.
went into training and development. and I did employee development for a financial services company. It was my first job as a training assistant.
Hmm.
And then I grew to be the manager of the training department over
Right.
the 8 year period that I was with that company. And I also learned that even adults in companies sometimes force them to go
Yeah.
to a training class and make it mandatory. And so they still act like
The,
they're hostages and victims.
exactly.
But you still, you have an opportunity to entice them to learn something. But what's most important is actually helping people want to learn and understand the value in it. Like that's so important rather than make them do it and make it mandatory. We can talk more about that. But
Exactly.
yeah, that's how I started my career. And then I moved into a couple of different other organizations, and I realized that I don't like it when I have to do something that feels out of integrity.
Yeah.
My highest value is
Hmm.
integrity. And
Yeah.
when a couple of different bosses were unethical, I was like, I think this is the sign that I should have my own business and to make my own decisions about what's right and wrong. And that's when I started my company, 2006.
Right, and that's so incredibly common when you're talking about the people who are in the thought leadership space or in the consulting spaces. When you really care about what you do and your reputation matters, you will, and I'm just putting it out there for you guys, anybody wants to get in there into it, you will run into some very unethical bosses, quote unquote. That
Mhm.
is your decision to where, all right, look, I'm going to put some money aside, save it so I can start my own thing. And that's incredibly important to
Yeah.
understand those feelings. And what I do want to mention, because you just put the date out there, and just for context, folks, 2006, I was a high school junior. And
Yeah. In other words, Halelly's old now.
I didn't say that. Well, I mean, listen, always the state of mind. If you guys look at her Instagram, I'm sure she can outlive 90% of you guys. So I will say that. But I do want to mention, because I bring that up because '06, I didn't have a Facebook account. I had like Black Planet. I might have been on the internet a couple times, but I
Yeah.
was more so outside. To me, it just changed. So when you're talking about developing employees, and then you get this boom of the internet and the way we're communicating now, how have you seen things change? How have you adjusted and all those things in terms of,
Yeah.
hey, there's something new every single day, and I got to keep up with it if I'm going to actually be someone worth paying for when it comes to employee development?
Completely, completely. So yeah, I've seen a lot over my career and have shifted a lot over my career. And I would say a big shift came with COVID, even just, like 5 years ago or
5 years
whatever.
ago, right? Because I
Yeah.
didn't even have a Zoom account before that. I,
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing. I was already using Zoom because actually for my podcast, I
oh
was
yeah,
using
right,
Zoom.
right. So
But
you're
I remember having to explain to people how to use Zoom.
right.
And then like now your grandma knows how to use Zoom. Like everybody.
The virtual events on Zoom now.
Yeah, yeah. It's become common and a household item.
Hmm.
Let's see. Well, definitely I used to work only in person. And now I work in person as sort of a sprinkling to working mostly online.
Oh
And so
man.
that's a big shift, right? Like it's a luxury now to bring people together for learning. And
Mhm.
it's a big expense. And it's not something that most companies can't do it easily
Mhm.
unless you work in a place where everybody works from the office, from one location, then obviously this not a problem. You just go into a conference room.
Right.
But like this week I did a leadership development webinar in
Hmm.
the morning. It was 3 hours, and the people were attending from all over Europe and the US at the same
Ah,
time.
nice.
But
Okay.
they worked for a global company, and now this company realizes that these people can learn together and learn from each other.
Right.
What's it like in Spain? What's it like in Bulgaria? What's it like in
Oh,
Salt Lake City? And
oh.
and they can collaborate and connect
Hmm.
in this kind of a setting and then go back to their usual day.
Hmm. Man, that's
So that is
amazing.
nice.
So just for context though, when it, and you don't have to, you can, get as detailed as you like on this one, but when it comes to the way I set up my systems for employee development, I go by the first book that I wrote. It's Swiftly. The acronym is Skilled, Well-Informed Front Team, and then LY is Lift Yourself. And we do this whole thing where we put people into groups and stuff like that. So that's a universal system. When it comes to the books you wrote, how did that stay evergreen over these years? Because again, I'm sure you
Mm,
wrote it, it was before you can do stuff virtually, but it doesn't matter. This is what I tell people all the time is when you're coming up with material, it has to be evergreen because you
yeah.
don't know what's going to change. And whether you're doing it in person, whether you're doing it virtually, you got to be able to do it however the client wants, and you have to be able to adjust. So when it
Yeah.
came to the books you wrote in your intellectual property, how did that system, ch not change over time, but be able to adjust over time so everybody
Yeah.
get it at every point?
Well, ultimately things can become dated, of course, and you should just keep you should, if you want to be someone who's an author, and if you're writing things that are current
Current, right.
and relevant, it
Mm-hmm.
means that you will probably need to come back and update them or create new material.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, that's one thing. The other thing is, because my work is centered around human interactions, I work mostly around leadership skills, emotional intelligence, communication. The good news is
Right.
that we have been a species for thousands and thousands of years,
Yes.
and what it takes to communicate, build trust, and deal with others actually is more the same than different.
Yes.
But our channels
Hmm.
are changing, and that creates new challenges we can talk about. Um, Interestingly, though, I think that one of the things that I was fighting against when I wrote my first book, Employee Development on a Shoestring, which
Hmm.
came out in 2012,
Right.
it was very much around the idea that for people to learn and develop new skills, new knowledge in their job to stay relevant and to grow into whatever their next challenge is, we have to stop thinking in terms of learning events and training programs,
Hmm.
because most of the time people learn what they need to learn
Hmm.
outside of the classroom.
Hmm.
And whether that's a in-person classroom or a virtual classroom and a program,
Hmm.
the way that most people learn what they need to learn happens outside of that. And what employers need to do is to get engaged with people where they're learning and help organize that around goals so
Hmm.
that they can become more efficient and more effective in achieving their learning goals, and stop just thinking in terms of it's a program. So whether that's a training program that you're running in person, or a training program, or even a recorded, like I have LinkedIn learning courses that are doing really well that people consume at their own on their own time. Like that's a type of self-directed,
Right.
but it's a programmatic learning. Like they have to sit there and watch this program for 45 minutes to get the gist of it.
Hmm.
That's a program. It's good, it has value. But
Hmm.
how do people really learn? Well, they learn by doing on the job, by shadowing someone, or having someone show them, or having someone mentor them,
Yes.
or sitting next to someone who's doing something, or trying it out. And that on the job learning is a big part of what I wrote about in the book, and
Yeah.
it's still very relevant, I
Yeah.
would say.
Well, I mean, I think that's incredibly important. That's a heavy point that you just put out there. And I will give you an example from my own life is as a football guy, I learned my odd and even numbers because of football plays. And I knew if you go hashback or I formation right, 34 dive, the four is the even number, so they go to the right. All right. If it's 35
Mm.
dives, the five, it's odd, you go to the left. All right. They didn't pick, I learned it in school, but it was like type of that. But when you're field training and you're doing the things you're passionate about, then the learning happens in a higher level. So I think that's an incredibly important point. It's a actually perfect lead in towards the thing I want to get you right really talking about because I myself I run every morning. I run every morning. I'm currently training for a marathon. I've done a couple half.
Wow.
I mean, and I do the running as a hobby, a lot like you do the lifting, and it helps clear my mind. It helps me when it comes to just constantly developing if I'm going to be teaching this stuff. Can you speak a little bit about your background as an Olympic weightlifter, as a like I think you said like a professional. I saw there was a ton of medals that you've learned. How does that connect to what you're talking about now? Just so people understand that these things that you do outside of work, man, it helps, man. It really gets your mind
Yeah.
where it needs to be.
Yeah. Well, I admire people like you. You've been an athlete your whole life, it sounds like.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was never an athlete. I never thought about
I
myself
think it hit
as
me.
an
I was like, wait a minute, did she play it? No, no.
no, I played no sports. I couldn't stand sports. I hated PE. I felt always like out of my element and like this is not for me.
You just said
Um,
you hated PE. If you guys go to her account right now, she said,
no, no, I am an athlete now. I'm
"Oh my,
54. I started being,
disappointed."
I started competing when I was 51.
No kidding. Are you
Yeah.
serious? Oh, I'll
It's
give you the mic.
never too late.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
yeah, it's never too late. When I was a teenager, I danced and
Hmm.
I loved dancing. So I'm physically, I like being athletic, but I didn't think about it as sport. I thought about it as art, if you will.
Mhm.
And
Right.
then I didn't continue it. And I always looked for what could be a sport or something that I could connect with, and nothing worked. And I hated running. And I would try to if I went to a gym, I didn't know it was boring. Machines seemed stupid, and I hated it. I hated all of it. At age 37 is when I first started lifting weights in a gym with a trainer. At
Right.
age 39, I started doing CrossFit.
Hmm.
And I love CrossFit. That's when I discovered that I really love it. It's challenging, and it allowed me to see that I am an athletic person, and I'm a competitive person.
Right.
And it was so much easier when there was a program that I enjoyed. And I think that's really key. So like I commend you for running every day, but I don't like running. So I probably wouldn't stick with it. I tried, but I wouldn't stick with it if it was something I didn't enjoy. But I really enjoyed CrossFit, and CrossFit has a weightlifting element.
Yeah.
So I was practicing weightlifting. What I didn't know is that I'm stronger than average. I didn't realize that. I'm just very competitive.
Right.
But when I was 49, my coach watched me and he goes, "Wait, how much do you snatch?" And I told him, and he goes, "Wait, how much do you clean and jerk?" And I told him, and he's like, "How old are you? How much do you weigh?" I was like, "This is really weird." And he's looking it up online. Like, what do you? I didn't know that there were competitions for masters athletes. I had no idea.
You're
I
right.
didn't know there was competitions for it, and none of that.
Yeah.
So he's
And then
looking it
for
up.
a person with your mindset, you hear that word competition. Some
Oh,
I
and
felt I
he's
really
like,
felt it.
those numbers you just told me you could medal. I was like, talk more.
Yeah, now we
What?
talking. Yeah, yeah. Now it's
Let me,
still
I'm
better. Yeah,
signing
let's
up.
do it.
So that's kind of how I forget your question, but that's how I hooked into that. So
Yeah.
I think that when you need to have a goal that's bigger than like, let me work out today
Hmm.
to keep you focused when you don't feel like working out.
Hmm.
And the same with learning, you have to see the bigger picture. You have to see the why, and it needs to be something that you can connect with. Because if it seems stupid, irrelevant, unnecessary, if
Hmm.
you can't see why you're doing it, if you can't hook into a
Hmm.
bigger reason to do something, a purpose, you're going to get stuck when the obstacles inevitably come up.
Right.
Your
I think that
motivation is not going to always be there.
Yeah, well, I think it's so important what you just said for you business owners to tune into and really put your ear very close to wherever you're listening to this from is when it's stupid and it's unnecessary to do, and you're just telling people to do activities to fill up the time, to waste their time. These are human beings we're talking about, and your business will reflect that. And I've had tons of experiences like that where there's the quote unquote, I put air quotes, boss is saying, look, you have to do this particular thing, but it makes absolutely no
No
sense.
sense.
It's unnecessary and it's a waste of time. Eventually, that stuff will catch up to you, especially if you make it a habit of doing it. Your full 24, again, you have 24 hours. All of us just getting 24 hours. That's it. All right. Very few, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. It's important for you to maximize every single moment of your 24 hours and not just do stuff to beat the clock because it will catch up to you. And I love the fact that, when you're talking about competition, you weren't into athletics, you weren't into these things, but when you started to see the correlation, hey, I could get a goal, I could do this, I could do that, then things started to happen for you. And this can be true with any one of you all. This is the environment and the culture that's your responsibility, folks. All right. Nobody, it's your responsibility. And
Yeah.
that's what brings me kind of the one of the main things, and I'll get you out of here soon. I don't want to be very respectful of your time, but when you look at the landscape and the way things are done now, how do you kind of just have your overall take in terms of how business owners can move forward with this AI driven world, with a world that is just going to become more and more digital? What kind of advice and what kinds of things and challenges do you recommend that how they deal with the challenges now?
Mm. Yeah. It's hard because you have to spend time learning and
Mhm.
developing and innovating, but you
Right,
also have to spend time doing the work that you already do and serving the
right,
clients you already have, right? So you have to find a balance between those. But the good thing is that there's people out there who already know some of the things you're trying to figure out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
right,
So my suggestion would be either bring on someone who already has a passion for that, who already knows a lot about it, and can shortcut your learning curve and help you get up to speed faster so that you don't have to learn it from scratch and figure it all out yourself. That's one.
Yes.
And then they could become one of your most valued employees if you allow them the freedom and give them the responsibility to take over. How do we incorporate AI into our business model? Or what are ways in which AI tools can help this specific company?
Right.
That's one idea, I would say. The
Right.
other is that it's like in football,
Mhm.
like in weightlifting, like in anything, you have to constantly hone your skill. You can't just rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
Just because you lifted heavy yesterday or you ran far yesterday, it doesn't take care of you today and tomorrow.
Right.
So you have to, I would say, spend a little bit of your time on developing yourself.
Yeah.
So because otherwise you will become irrelevant. You
Right.
will become outdated, outmoded, and your competition will eat your lunch.
They will.
So,
They most
you know,
definitely will.
so you can't say, but I already, it's done. The
It's
world is moving forward. And
Mhm.
so you can begrudge it or
Mhm.
you can get with it.
You can get
And so
moving. You can get moving, man. And
get,
that part of it, I can speak from experience because if I didn't do that, Haley, she would not be on this podcast right now. If I didn't just buckle, a lot of people say, "Yo, Aswell, you got to start using Chat GPT." I know you like to write your own stuff. I know you missed your focus, but what I actually started doing is I would just write up typically the long message or long articles that say, "Hey, Chat GPT, turn that into some reach outs, turn that into a list
mm,
of this," and then reach out to that person. And I'm able to triple, like, I mean, the tons of stuff I'm able to get done in a given
nice.
day because I buckled, I paid for it. It's like what, $44 a month to have the Chat GPT stuff. And you guys can see it's already seeing an effect. And that's the key. Are you getting to the desired result? I want people to think of Move Swiftly and immediately think of employee development. That's the desired result. Having people like you on to share your wisdom is incredibly, incredibly important. I'm grateful for to have you. So
Well,
can you,
thank you.
before we go, can you just tell people a little bit about what's next, how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with you coming down the pipeline or what's coming down the pipeline?
Thank you. And I appreciate the invitation. It's been fun talking with you. So I would love to continue the conversation. If anybody wants to, they can reach out to me. Talentgrow.com is my website. And you can send me a message. There's actually a little voice recording thing on there too. You can contact me that way.
Mhm.
And after uh 30 years of doing everything real corporate and real like I only talk about this, about people within the corporate role and all.
Yeah.
I'm kind of down with the boundaries. I've been a researcher of health and nutrition and fitness my whole life and applying it to myself and
Yeah.
to people in my sphere. So lately I've started doing something I'm calling whole life optimization coaching.
There
Uh,
you go.
the nickname I'm calling it is badass coaching. And
Yes.
and it's sort of to signal like I'm done being corporate and proper. Like we are a whole person,
Yeah.
and you don't have just your work self and your personal self. Like it's one thing. And if
Right.
you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be successful in business or in your job.
Right.
If you're not good at your job, your health will suffer. So it's all interrelated, and
Mhm.
that's sort of a very big passion project of mine lately.
Hey,
And it's been
yeah,
fun.
please, yes, yes, please keep us all informed. We're all about staying fit. In fact, I'm a boxing trainer, so I'm starting my own boxing boot camp. I'm starting back the boxing boot camp training as we speak. Recording this, by the way, it is early May, so as the summer gets along, we'll
Nice.
get all the things going for that. So Haleli, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back. Was you said yeah, you're back at UMD, the Fair to Terps, baby. You're back on that campus, back in College Park. You're teaching, and a bunch of college students are there just going through the motions. They don't feel like being there. I want you to take yourself back to that place, that young lady. Pretend she's here in the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Um, there is something that you can find that will entice them. If you spend the time, you
Mm.
can help them connect. But beyond that, if you've done that and they're not connecting, move on. You do not need to waste your time with hostages. The world is full of people hungry to learn. Focus on them.
All right, listen, and if you watch this on video, I'm officially dropping the mic.
Yeah.
Dropping the mic. Again, appreciate you. Please stay in touch. Let me know how we can work, and all the information will be included in the show notes as well. So, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.